Hello friends, in this video I am going to discuss on the concept of valuation under GST. The valuation under GST is very important to determine the value of any supply made by the supplier to the recipient of supply. By determining this value, you can apply the appropriate GST rates and determine the tax liability that is to be paid to the government. The ultimate aim of this GST law is to collect the appropriate taxes for any supply made by the supplier. So for this purpose, valuation under GST is very important chapter. Okay, let us get into the provisions of valuation provided under GST. Under CGST Act 2017, Section 15 specifies the provisions relating to valuation under GST. Section 15 is divided into 4 subsections. So subsection 1 is the general subsection. It says what is the value of any supply if certain conditions are satisfied. That is subsection 1. Subsection 2 is nothing but what all the other items to be included in the valuation if that is not charged, either not charged, or if it is separately charged, or it has to be charged. So whatever the scenario may be, but these are all the items to be also included more and above the price actually charged by the supplier. That is subsection 2. Subsection 3 is nothing but these are all the items mentioned in subsection 3 is the items to be excluded from the valuation. The 4th subsection is nothing but it is like a residual subsection. If the above 3 subsections cannot be applied or the cases falls out of the scope of the subsections discussed before, then subsection 4 has to be applied. Subsection 4 refers to GST rules. GST rules mentions certain types of valuation for a certain types of conditions are not satisfied. So in that case, let us now enter into the actual provisions of CGST Act 2017. Section 15. Section 15 subsection 1. Subsection 1 of section 15 says value of any taxable supply provided by the supplier should be the actual price charged by the supplier to the recipient of supply, or you can even call it as the transaction value, actual transaction value, that has to be considered as the value for the taxable supply. It is the general condition for any scenario. This is the condition. Okay, so this condition or this value can be taken as the value of taxable supply if there are 2 conditions. Apart from that, the 2 conditions are satisfied, the additional 2 conditions. Okay, condition number 1, the supplier and the recipient should not be a related person. You all know, we have already discussed in our previous classes who is called as related persons. So if the supplier and the recipient are not related person, that is one condition. Second condition, the price actually charged by the supplier should be the sole consideration paid by the recipient of supply. There should not be any other consideration, or the consideration not in the monetary form, or the consideration should be in a non-monetary form or in any other form. That should not be the case. So whatever the amount paid by the recipient of supply should represent the value charged by the supplier. If that is the case, then these 2 conditions are satisfied, then whatever the price charged by the supplier should be taken as the value for the taxable supply. Clear? So what are those conditions? Condition number 1, supplier and recipient should not be a related person. Okay. Second, condition number 2, price is the sole consideration paid by the recipient of supply. There is no separate consideration, or the consideration that does not represent the value mentioned in the invoice or the value charged by the supplier. That cases are not applicable. So these 2 conditions are satisfied, then whatever the price charged by the supplier should be taken as the value. Okay, so subsection 1. Subsection 2. Subsection 2 says the following items, even if it is not charged or if it is not included in the price charged by the supplier, it has to be included mandatory by virtue of the subsection 2. What are those items? Item number 1, any taxes or duties or any other charges, levies or whatever the case may be, it is levied under any other law apart from this GST law. We leave out this GST law. So any other law, if there are any charges, duties, etc. is levied, that has to be added on the value of the taxable supply. It has to be separately added if it is not already included in the price. That is first condition, first item. Second item, any amount that has to be paid by the supplier, that has to be incurred by the supplier for providing this supply, that is paid by the recipient or incurred by the recipient, and that amount is not included in the price charged in the invoice by the supplier. Clear? I will repeat. Amount that is paid by the recipient of supply on behalf of the supplier. If the recipient has not paid, the supplier should have paid for providing this supply. So in that case, if that amount, if it is included in the price actually charged by the supplier, then this provision will not apply. If it is not included, then this by virtue of this provision, that has to be added or included in the valuation. Okay, that is the second item. What is the third item? Third item is any incidental expenses or any packing, forwarding costs, or whatever the cost, any other cost incurred by the supplier in relation to the supply, that is the charges are incurred either before or upon removal of goods or supplier services. Clear? I will repeat. The supplier has incurred some incidental expenses. The incidental expenses, or it can also be packing or forwarding charges or any other costs. When it is incurred, in the case of supply of goods, it is incurred either before the removal of goods or upon removal of goods. That is first case. In the case of supplier services, before providing that supplier services, he has incurred that particular cost. In that case, that particular cost or the other extra expenses or the packing or forwarding cost, whatever the case may be, that has to be included in the valuation. This valuation, you should remember, whatever we are discussing now, this valuation, that is nothing but on that value you will have to compute taxes, and that is the actual liability for the GST. So these are all the items to be included. Either the supply actually includes that in the invoice or not, that is not the case here. These items to be included at least for the computation of GST liability. For that purpose, these items has to be included. Okay, that is the third item. Next, fourth item, any interest or any late fee or any penalty charged by the supplier for any delayed payment made by the recipient. Clear? The supplier is supplying the goods or supplying services. For that, the consideration has to be paid by the recipient of supply. For example, if the supplier is giving credit of, for example, like 1 month, the recipient of supply is making the payment only after 2 months. He has exceeded the credit limit. In that case, the supplier is charging any interest or any penalty or any charges, whatever you can call it as. So that amount has also to be included in the valuation. That also to be included in the value for the purpose of computing this GST. Okay, that is item number 4. Item number 5, any subsidies that is directly linked to the price. Clear? Any subsidies that is directly linked to the price, that has to be included in the value. In this inclusion, there is one exclusion. That exclusion is nothing but if that particular subsidy is provided by any central government or state government, then that amount will not be included. Clear or not? The fifth item is nothing but, I will repeat, fifth item is any subsidies that is directly linked to the price. It should not be subsidies which is given without any conditions or any other subsidy, any general subsidy. Nothing will be, those are all will not be coming under this question. In this particular case, only the subsidies that are directly linked to the price. Okay, one, that has to be included, because the subsidy you cannot exclude, because just because you have received a subsidy you cannot exclude, so that has to be included for the purpose of computing GST in the valuation. But there is one exclusion to this condition. What that exclusion says, if that particular subsidy is provided by central government or state government directly, in that case that will not be included. Now are we clear? Okay. So these are all the items that is to be included in the valuation. There are 5 items we have discussed. We will repeat it. We'll repeat that again now. What is item number 1? Item number 1 is nothing but any taxes, duties or any charges that is levied under any other law apart from this GST law. That item to be included in the valuation, whether that is included or not, or whether it is charged separately or not by the supplier, that has to be included in the valuation. That is first part. Second part, amount to be paid by the supplier, which is paid or incurred by the recipient. The amount has to be paid by the supplier, but it is paid or incurred by the recipient. That amount, if it is already included in the price charged by the supplier, then that should not be again charged. If it is not included in the price or the value charged by the supplier, then that has to be added by virtue of this provision. That is second item. Third item, any incidental expenses that includes packing charges or any other cost. So that is not defined, it is like any other cost. So that cost is incurred by the supplier. Okay, so in this case, when the cost is being incurred, it does not include all the costs you incur. It has to, there is a certain time limit for it. In the case, the supply can be divided into two, as you all know. One is supply of services, second one is supply of goods. In the case of supply of goods, any charges like this, any incidental expenses incurred up to the time of removal has to be taken. That is first. Second, in the case of supply of services, any charges or expenses incurred up to the time of provision of supply or completing the supply, that has to be included in the valuation purpose. Next, item number 4, any interest or late fee or any penalty charged by the supplier for the delayed payment of the consideration made by the recipient. So those items has to be added in the valuation. Next, item number 5. 5 is nothing but subsidies, any subsidies that is directly linked to the price. If that subsidy is deducted by the supplier while charging in the invoice, so in that case the said subsidy has to be added back in the value, that has to be included in the valuation. So this inclusion has one another exclusion. That exclusion is nothing but if the particular subsidy which is to be included, which is directly linked with the price, if that particular subsidy is provided by the central government or any other state government, that will not be included in the valuation. Clear? That is subsection 2. Next, we will enter into subsection 3. Subsection 3 is, as I told before, it is the exclusions. These are all the items to be excluded while determining the value. What are all those items? Item number 1, any discounts to be deducted while arriving at the value. What are all the discounts, or when it has to be deducted? Now we will see that. 1, that if the discount is provided before the supply is made, the discount is provided. You can easily refer to it as trade discount. So any trade discount which is generally provided before the supply gets over, so that trade discount has to be excluded from the valuation. And the next condition for that is also that particular discounted has to be recorded in the invoice. If the discount is not recorded in the invoice, then this question will not arise, whether it is included or excluded, that will not arise. If at all you want to deduct some amount from the invoice, then it has to be the discount. That discount should be provided before the supply is made. So that is one. Second, the discounts in certain conditions or in certain situations, the discounts may also be provided after the supply is made as well. In that case, it can be excluded from the valuation only if that particular discount has to be provided based on some agreement entered before the supply. Okay, let me be clear. 1, there is an agreement to supply. In that agreement, they have provided some discount clause. The discount clause says if the particular recipient is satisfying certain conditions after the supply is made, then this particular discount will be provided to the recipient. Otherwise, this discount will not be provided. That is already recorded or already noted in the agreement, which is entered before the supply is made. In that case, that discount can be excluded from the value. That the discount can be deducted from determining the value. That is first. Second, that is one condition. Second condition, when you are providing that discount, when you are providing that discount, the input tax credit that is availed by the recipient is reversed to the extent of this discount amount. Clear? If that is done, then only that discount can be, that value can be excluded from the valuation. Otherwise it cannot be excluded. I will repeat it or it may be clear more. One, the discounts has to be recorded before the supply is made, or the conditions has to be accepted before the supply is made, and on satisfaction of that condition after the supply, that particular discount is provided. That is first condition. Second condition, for example, when I charge the invoice, at the time of supply I charge the invoice, and in that invoice the value is ₹100. I have not provided the discount because the conditions are not satisfied, so the value is 100. After some 1 month, I have already told to the customer or the recipient of supply, I have already told them that if you are making me payment before 1 month, then you can get a discount of ₹10. Clear? So in that case, what has happened, after 20 days of the supply got completed, the recipient has made the payment for the consideration. The recipient has made the payment for the supply. So in that case, what I did, the recipient has made the payment only to the extent of ₹90 because he knows that ₹10 will be provided as discount. So in that case, that ₹10 can be excluded from the valuation. But what will happen in the real life scenario, when I charge this ₹100, that time I will have charged tax on that ₹100. Clear? So when I charge the tax, immediately the recipient of supply is eligible for the input tax credit to that particular extent. Tax on that ₹100 is eligible as input tax credit for the recipient of supply. Okay. Later point of time, I am giving the discount of ₹10. That is to be excluded from the value. But in my scenario, I have already charged the tax and made payment to the government, and the recipient has also availed the input tax credit to the extent of tax on ₹100. So now what is the condition? What does this provision say? The recipient of supply has to reverse that input tax credit. He has to reverse that input tax credit to the extent of what amount? To the extent of this discount amount. Whatever the amount pertains to this discount, it has to be reversed by the recipient from the input tax credit available to him. If these two conditions are satisfied, then the discounts provided even after the supply is completed, that can be excluded from the valuation. Only these two items which is provided by the act itself as the exclusions from the valuation. That is subsection 3. Then we are coming to the last subsection. That subsection says nothing but if the value of supply cannot be determined by the above subsections. As I said, subsection 1, subsection 2, subsection 3. In these 3 subsections, if the value cannot be determined, then you have to refer to the CGST rules. So whatever the valuation provided in the CGST rules, you have to apply that rules and determine the value of supply. Clear or not? So this is subsection 4. Let us get to the next slide. I will discuss certain circulars which is issued by the department for the purpose of this valuation on certain scenarios or certain circumstances. In that, among the circular number 47/21 for 2018, that is issued on 8th June 2018. This circular is issued to address an issue between OEM and the component manufacturer. The transaction is as like that. 1. OEM manufacturer supplies molds and dies to component manufacturer. As per this circular, it says that the supply made by the OEM to the component manufacturer, which is molds and dies, and it is supplied free of cost, it should not be considered as a supply. That is the first clarification provided by the circular. Second clarification, the component manufacturer using that molds and dies produces certain goods, and that goods is again supplied back to the OEM. The charges or the value for the goods is charged by the component manufacturer to the OEM. Whether that value or whether that price should include the cost of this molds and dies which is supplied as free of cost by the OEM or not. That is the second question. In this, what does the department says? Department again says, since the original transaction, which is the supply made by the OEM, that is molds and dies supplied by OEM to the component manufacturer, is not to be considered as supply, and the cost should not be charged to the component manufacturer. So in that case, whatever the supply is made by the component manufacturer to the OEM by using the molds and dies will not be included in that particular valuation. So that is the second issue. But there is another third issue. For example, if the molds or dies, the agreement between OEM and the component manufacturer is like this: the molds and dies has to be borne by the component manufacturer. Molds and dies has to be borne by the component manufacturer. But what is happening here is that OEM is purchasing that molds and dies on behalf of component manufacturer and supplying that molds and dies to the component manufacturer at free of cost. In that case, the above stated provisions or the rules or the clarification provided by circular will not apply. What the circular says is, if the molds and dies are at the responsibility of the component manufacturer, then that value is considered as supply, and that value has to be added in the value which is provided by the component manufacturer, which is charged by the component manufacturer. But if the molds and dies are at the responsibility of OEM, then in that case, any supply made by the OEM to the component manufacturer is not to be treated as supply. Point number one. Second, the component manufacturer supplies certain goods to the OEM by using the molds and dies. That value also will not include the cost of the molds and dies. That is second. Third, if the component manufacturer is responsible to purchase the molds and dies on his own motion, but the OEM is purchasing on behalf of the component manufacturer and supplying that as free of cost to the component manufacturer, in that case what will happen? That amount will be treated as supply, and the OEM has to charge GST on that, and the component manufacturer has to also include the cost of the molds and dies on the supply made by the component manufacturer to the OEM. So that is what the circular clarifies here. Okay. So let us go to the next circular. There is another circular issued by the department, circular number 92/11/2019. It is issued on 7th March 2019. What does that circular says? That circular is addressing the issues relating to discounts. So as per the circular, what does this say? When I was discussing subsection 3, I told you that the subsection 3, the value of discount can be excluded from the valuation of supply. But in this circular, what does this say? Buy more, save more offers or any staggered discount, that is to be covered under section 15 subsection 3, or periodic or year-ending discounts. These are all the types of discounts that has to be allowed as a deduction from the supply. ITC should not or is not required to be reversed or something, because what does this say? These types of discounts are actually provided at the time of supply itself, whether it is periodic discount or year-ending discount. For example, it is like clearance sale, 50% clearance sale, whatever the case may be. So in that case, these are all the discounts are provided at the time of supply itself. So section 15 subsection 3 applies to these type of discounts. If that particular subsection applies, then what is the result of it? The particular discount will not be included in the valuation. That is first. Second, or any secondary discounts. Secondary discounts is nothing but offered after the supply is already over. If the discounts are offered after the supply is over, then that will not be allowed as exclusions in arriving at the value. That should not be deducted from the valuation. So that is the secondary discounts. But when I was discussing subsection 3, I told you that if the particular discount is recorded in the agreement which is entered before the supply is made, then that discount can be allowed provided the ITC related to that discount is reversed by the recipient. So that particular condition again applies to this particular scenario. I told you that the secondary discounts will not be excluded, I told you, but if the secondary discounts are already recorded before in the agreement which is entered before the supply, in that case the recipient has to reverse the ITC related to the discounts, and that discounts can be availed as a exclusion from the valuation. That is what this circular clarifies. So there is another concept which is connected to this particular circular is nothing but the cashback offers. So in the case of cashback offers, whether it is to be included or excluded, that is the question here. So that cashback offers can be divided into two categories. One, cashback offers provided by the supplier of goods, that is one type of cashback. Second cashback offer is cashback offers provided by person other than supplier of goods. So these are all the two types of cashback. In the first particular cashback which is provided by the supplier itself, in that case if the cashback is duly recorded in the invoice, then that particular cashback can be allowed as deduction while arriving at the value. That is first scenario. Second scenario, if the cashback is not recorded in the invoice, then it will not be allowed as deduction. Okay, that is first. Second leg of it is nothing but the cashback offers provided by any third person. Any third person will obviously not be recorded in the invoice. That is first. So because of that cashback, whatever the amount you are getting as a cashback will not be excluded in the valuation. Okay, I will give you an example. You are going to a shop and purchasing a mobile phone. So in that mobile phone, there could be a cashback offer which is available at that particular time. So the cashback offer is provided by from the brand side itself. You are purchasing some any Samsung or whatever the brand may be. The brand itself is providing maybe like a promotional offer or whatever the case may be. They are providing as a cashback. Then those those cashback which will also be mentioned in the invoice, that cashback also will be mentioned in the invoice. Either the cashback can be provided upfront, it can be provided immediately, or the cashback may come back to you after 1 month, 3 months or 6 months, whatever the time duration the brand, the supplier of goods has mentioned. So whatever the case may be, if that is duly recorded in the invoice, then that amount will not be included while calculating the GST, while arriving at the valuation of the supply. But if the cashback is provided by any third party, for example a bank by using this particular credit card or something, because of that you are getting the cashback offer by purchasing this particular product, then in that case that cashback is provided by any third party bank. So that will not be excluded from the valuation, that will not be deducted from the valuation for the purpose of computing this GST. So this is as per the circular, and it is connected to that particular circular as well. Okay, so I was telling you that there are two conditions to be satisfied for treating the price actually charged by the supplier to the recipient as the value of supply, value of taxable supply. So condition number one, just to repeat, condition number one is supplier and recipient should not be a related person. That is condition number one. Condition number two is price is the sole consideration charged by the supplier, and the price is the sole consideration which is paid by the recipient of supply. So if these two conditions are satisfied, whatever the amount mentioned in the invoice or whatever the price actually charged by the supplier should be taken as the taxable value of supply. So in that case, I told you that supplier and recipient should not be a related person. So we should now know who is called as related persons. The related person is defined in explanation to section 15. Under section 15 there is an explanation. That explanation provides who are all called as related persons. In that the following categories of persons will be treated as a related person. One, officer or any director of one another business. There are either it could be the same business, there is an officer and a director, or there are two businesses on which the one another business they are, it is like officer or director in the other person's business as well. So in that case they will be called as a related person. Second, legally recognized partners in business. Legally recognized in the case that there is a partnership deed. Based on the partnership deed, they are partners of a particular business. In that case, those partners will be called as related persons. Third condition is the employer or employee. that is employer-employee relationship, that is also called as a related person. Fourth, any person directly or indirectly owns or controls 25% or more of paid up voting shares, paid up capital voting shares. The person is controlling 25% more. I told you before, it is like a substantial holding. So in that case, they will be called as a related person. One controls the other directly or indirectly. One controls the business or the decision of the other person, whether it can be directly or indirectly. In that case, those two persons can be called as a related person. Then both of them are controlled by a third person. If the two persons are controlled by any third person, then those two persons as well as the third person will be called as a related person. Next, members of the same family, husband, wife, daughter, son, father, mother, those people who are all part of the same family, those are also called as a related person. So this related person definition is already discussed before. I am just discussing for the benefit of the current provisions. Next, there are certain notification and circular on the part of TDS and TCS provisions. TDS and TCS provisions, this TDS or the TCS which I refer here is not related to the GST TDS. This TDS and TCS is as per the Income Tax Act. Under Income Tax Act, you know that there are certain deduction provisions or tax to be deducted at source, and the second part is tax to be collected at source on certain transactions. So in that case, those TDS and TCS, whether it has to be included in the valuation or not, that is clarified through by way of notification and by way of circular. There is a notification number 23/2017 which is issued on 19th July 2017. What does the notification says? From the invoice value, while calculating TDS under income tax law, the component of GST shall not be included. This is nothing but it is not straight away related to the inclusion or exclusion in the valuation. This says nothing but, see, for example, the value of invoice is 100 rupees and the applicable rate of tax GST rate is 18%. Then it will become what the total invoice value will become 118 rupees. For example, if the applicable TDS, the TDS applies on that and the applicable TDS rate is 10%, then the question here is whether the 10% will be on 118 rupees or the 10% will be on 100 rupees. So this particular notification clarifies that the TDS has to be calculated only on the base value. The tax component, the GST component should not be included for the purpose of computing this TDS provisions. So this particular notification or this particular provision was even available in the erstwhile service tax law as well. That is again extended for this GST. So this is very clear that TDS will not include GST. Second, there is another circular number 76/50/2018 which is issued on 31st December 2018. What does this circular say? TCS under IT Act is not a tax on goods. It is not a tax which is on goods. This is nothing but a levy. It is called as interim levy. It is interim levy which will be adjusted against the final tax liability. Again I am telling you that the TCS I am referring here is not the TCS under GST. It is the TCS under Income Tax Act. Under Income Tax Act, for certain transactions or if the transaction satisfies certain conditions, then provision and TCS provision shall become applicable. So in that case, how the transaction will happen? I will give you an example. One, there is a purchase of certain goods which will fall under the condition of this TCS. So that particular goods are purchased for a value of 1 lakh rupees and the rate of GST may also be charged on top of it, which will maybe like 18% may be applicable for that. The total invoice value will become 1,18,000 rupees. So that is the total invoice value. Because of this TCS provisions, the supplier has to collect some more amount which is called as TCS from the particular buyer. That may be either 1% or 2.5% as per the applicable rates. That amount will be over and above the invoice value. So whether that amount will also be included in the valuation while computing the GST, that is what clarified by the circular. The circular says that it is not a tax. because I told you under subsection 2 what all the values to be included. In that, the first item I told you is nothing but the any taxes, levies or charges which is levied by any other law other than GST law that has to be included in the value. So this is again some tax or some charges which is levied under income tax law. So whether that has to be included in the value of supply or not, this is the question here, confusion here. So that confusion is clarified by the department by way of the circular. It says that this is actually not a tax on the goods. This is nothing but an interim levy. It is a small levy which will be adjusted against the final tax liability. So that levy will not be amounted as a tax, so that will not be included in the value. So this particular subsection 2 will not apply to this particular case. This is the provision of TCS. So on this provision I have an example for you. There is a motor vehicle worth rupees 20 lakhs which is sold by Sundar Private Limited to a customer in retail market, and for which rupees 5 lakh has been paid in cash and balance amount paid by way of check. So the question here is whether the TCS under section 206C of Income Tax Act is applicable in the given case. So to answer this question, you should be knowing the 206C section of the TCS, that is the Income Tax Act. So to answer this question, for the time being I am telling you that the TCS will apply if the payment in cash is more than 2 lakh rupees. So in that case, this TCS, since the cash is paid at to the extent of 5 lakh rupees, TCS provisions will apply for this case. Next, who is required to collect TCS? The TCS has to be collected by the supplier. In the current question, the supplier is Sundar Private Limited. Sundar Private Limited is the supplier and the customer is from a retail market who is the recipient of supply. Who is required to collect TCS? Sundar Private Limited is required to collect TCS from the customer. The TCS may be applicable, rate of TCS has to be collected. What is the value of TCS that has to be mentioned? Again, it is 1% of the TCS is applicable for this particular transaction. So next, value of taxable supply under section 15 of CGST Act. Under section 15, how you will determine the value? Here the value to be included is only 20 lakh rupees. Whatever the TCS amount which is to be collected over and above this 20 lakh rupees as per the Income Tax Act, that should not be included based on the circular which I discussed before. So that is by applying that particular circular you can answer this question as the value under section 15 will be 20 lakh rupees in the current case. Next, invoice price of Mr. Sundar Private Limited. What will be the invoice price? You can compute the total invoice, that is 20 lakh rupees, then applicable GST rate, then the TCS amount. Everything has to be computed. They say that assume applicable TCS is 1% and GST is 28%. So in this case, if it is 28%, you have to compute 28% on 20 lakh rupees that has to be charged. Then 1% has to be computed. 1% also should not include 28%. It should be calculated purely on the 20 lakh rupees. So this question is answered in this way. Okay. Next we are going to discuss on certain other circular. The next circular I am going to refer is circular number 73 bar 47 bar 2018. This circular is issued on 5th November 2018. What does this circular say? This circular is nothing but the transaction between supplier and recipient through an agent. That agent is not a normal agent, that agent is a bill credit agent. We have discussed who is bill credit agent in our earlier classes. So in this case, what does the circular say? The circular says nothing but, I will give you a scenario. A is supplying to B. A supplies the goods directly to B, but the order for the particular supply is procured from the bill credit agent. The order is procured by the agent from B and it is forwarded to A. Based on that order, A supplies goods directly to B. It is not supplied to the agent. Supply is done directly, but the order is procured to the agent. And the amount for that order is also made through the agent. B is making the payment to DCA and DCA is making the payment to the particular supplier. So in this case, whether the interest amount which is collected by the bill credit agent, whether that has to be included in the valuation. See, all this circular, all these provisions we have discussed earlier. Again, I wanted to discuss for the benefit of this valuation chapter as well, the connect to this as well. Okay, so in this case what will happen, the DCA is not acting independently, he is a part and parcel of this supplier. So in this case, the amount or the credit limit which is extended by the agent to B, that is the interest part of that, it should not be included in the value, because that is a separate transaction. Whatever the supply made by A to B is separate, and whatever the interest collected by the agent from B, that is a separate transaction. That separate transaction will not be included in the invoice value for the supply made by A to B. So that will not be included. So I have also mentioned that this particular agency situation will form under Schedule 1. Schedule 1 category defines this particular type of agent transaction. So that is one scenario. Second scenario, A is supplying the goods to agent DCA, and DCA in turn procures the order from B and supplies the goods to B. Here the goods are supplied through agent. In that case, the invoice is actually issued by the agent. There are two transactions. One, agent buys goods from the supplier, that is A. That is one separate transaction. On the transaction, the GST has to be charged and everything, whatever the act, whatever the provisions applicable for this transaction has to be applied on this particular transaction. Second transaction is the agent supplies goods to the recipient, that is B. So that transaction also is a separate transaction. Both are separate supplies. In that case, the invoice is issued in the name of agent. Agent on his own is issuing the invoice to the B. In that, whatever the interest he is collecting from B for the loans he has extended to B, or the credit period he has given to the B, that interest has to be included in the invoice value. So this is as per this circular. Scenario 1, scenario A or scenario 1, in that case interest should not be included. Scenario 2, interest has to be included. You can understand these provisions in a simple way. If the goods are supplied based on the order of agent, the goods are supplied directly by the supplier to the recipient of supply, and the invoice is made by the supplier directly on the recipient. If these two conditions are there, then whatever the interest part for the credit extended by the agent, that will be termed as a separate supply, and it will not be included in the valuation. But if the goods are supplied through the agent, and the agent on his own name is invoicing to the recipient of supply, in that case the interest charged by the agent has to be included in the valuation. So it is very as simple as that. But here I will want to refer to another notification, notification number 12 of 2017, I remember. So in that case, whatever the interest for the scenario B, whatever the interest charged by the agent, that is an exempt supply. That particular notification exempts that as well. So this is clear now. Now we are going to the next circular. Next circular is circular number 108/27/2017. This circular is issued on 22nd July 2017. What does this circular says? This circular is issued for the clarification on GST on subscription, the subscription amount charged by the Residential Welfare Association from its members. Nowadays you know that there are apartment systems or gated community systems on which there are multiple flats or multiple units are built in a single building, and multiple families occupy those buildings. In that case, to maintain those buildings or to incur certain common expenses among the people who are living in that building, there are certain associations created among them. Those associations are called as residential welfare associations. So those residential welfare associations, they will collect certain amount on a monthly basis from the occupants of that particular building. That amount may be fixed based on any condition or any methodology. That is not the question here. Those residential welfare association is collecting a monthly subscription. It can be even be called as maintenance charges. Nowadays in common parlance it is called as maintenance charges. So those amount collected by the residential welfare association, whether GST is applicable on that or not, that is what the circular is trying to clarify here. Here what the circular says, if the amount, the applicability of GST is nothing but based on the amount, there is a amount threshold for the GST applicability. The amount threshold can be seen in two different timelines. One, from the appointed date till 25th January 2018. 25th January 2018, the threshold limit was 5,000 rupees. And after 25th Jan 2018, the threshold has been increased or revised to 7,500 rupees. So what is the threshold means? Up to 5,000 rupees. For example, your monthly maintenance charges or monthly subscription for being a member in this residential welfare association. If your monthly subscription is up to 5,000 rupees, then there is no GST applicable on that. The residential welfare association is not supposed to collect any GST or charge any GST up to 5,000 rupees. The moment it crosses 5,000 rupees, you will have to, the GST will become applicable on that and the association has to charge GST. But 5,000 rupees has become 7,500 rupees with effect from 25th January 2018. That is the first condition. Now there are certain situations. Now we have scenario number 1. Contribution is more than 7,500 rupees and the aggregate turnover is less than 20 lakhs rupees. Whether GST is applicable. As per this circular, if the monthly contribution is more than 7,500 rupees, then GST shall apply. However, the registration chapter says that up to 20 lakhs rupees, the taxpayer is exempted to register himself, and once the registration is not applicable, the GST liability also will not apply. So in this case, the contravention of these two sections has to be dealt in this manner, and it has to be read in a conjoined manner. In this scenario, the contribution is more than 7,500 rupees, though, but however, since the aggregate turnover is less than 20 lakhs rupees, the GST will not be applicable. So both the sections or both the provisions has to be applied simultaneously. Okay, let us come to the second scenario. Second scenario is contribution is more than 7,500 rupees and the turnover is also more than 20 lakhs rupees. In this case, there is no doubt that because of this circular, since the contribution is more than 7,500 rupees, GST will be applicable. Also, as per the registration chapter or the provisions related to registration, once the turnover exceeds 20 lakhs rupees, the person has to get himself registered mandatorily. Also, GST also shall become applicable. So in this case, both these conditions are getting satisfied, GST will become applicable. Scenario number 3. Here the contribution is less than 7,500 rupees, but the turnover in the financial year exceeds 20 lakhs rupees. So registration provision says that the person has to get himself registered and the tax has to be paid. But in this case, this circular says since the contribution is less than 7,500 rupees, the GST shall not become applicable. So on reading these two provisions simultaneously, since the contribution is less than 7,500 rupees, the GST will not become applicable. So in all these scenarios, then we have another question on availability of input tax credit. The answer given by the circular is like that. Input tax credit is available on inputs if the contribution charged is more than 7,500 rupees. So what does this mean? If you have the output tax liability, then only the input tax credit can become eligible. If the contribution is less than 7,500 rupees, you will not have any GST liability, you will not have any output tax liability. In that case, you cannot claim input tax credit on the inputs or on the supplies you receive on doing that maintenance. So that question will not arise, and you cannot claim input tax credit on that, because that input tax credit will not have any output tax liability. It will not meet any output tax liability. So that is the provisions relating to this. Then the next question, whether if a person is holding 2 units or 2 residential units in a single building, so in that case the maintenance charges will be charged for a single unit. It will be charged for each unit separately. If a single person is holding 2 units, then whether the 2 units, the maintenance charges paid in respect of all the two units has to be taken as a it has to be considered, or for each and every unit has to be considered. That is the question here. Here the circular says that it 7,500 threshold applies for each unit for each person. So it means even if a person is holding 2 units and the monthly maintenance charges is 5,000 rupees for 1 unit, it means the person will be paying 10,000 totally 10,000 to the welfare association for the 2 units he is holding. Since it is crossing 7,500 rupees, because of this circular, the single unit maintenance charges does not cross 7,500 threshold. So this GST will not become applicable on this aspect as well. Okay. Now we have seen the various circulars issued by department relating to this valuation rules. Now let us enter into this particular subsection number 4. We saw that if at all the valuation cannot be done in the preceded 3 subsections, we have to refer to the subsection 4. Subsection 4 again in turn refers to the GST rules. In GST rules of CGST rules, the relevant rules applicable for these valuations are rule number 27 to rule number 35. You have to refer to rule 27 to rule 35 for any questions relating to valuation. Then this rules has to be referred if at all the particular transaction does not satisfy the 2 conditions which is provided in subsection 1. So I will again repeat that conditions. Condition number 1 is the supplier and the recipient should not be a related person. Second, the price is not the sole consideration paid by the recipient. If any one of these conditions are violated, then subsection 1 will not become applicable on that particular transaction. If subsection 1 fails, we will have to refer to subsection 4. Subsection 4 refers to rules. So we will have to do the valuation based on any of these rules, which we are going to see now. Okay, so let us now start with rule number 27. What rule number 27 says? Then this rule is applicable. Each and every rule applies to a different scenario. Rule number 27 applies for finding out the valuation of any supply where the consideration is not wholly in the money. I told you if the price is not the sole consideration. So in this rule it says that if the consideration is not wholly in the money, it means that non-monetary terms also there are certain consideration being paid by the recipient of supply. So in that case we will have to refer to rule 27. What could be the non-monetary consideration? I will start with an example. For example, you are going to a shop to buy any mobile phone. So in that case what you are doing, you are already holding an old mobile phone, which is for example 2 years old mobile phone, and you wanted to replace it with a new one. In that case you are trying to sell your old mobile phone or exchange your old mobile phone and buy a new one. So in that case your old mobile phone will be taken in certain value. If the new mobile phone cost you around 20,000 rupees and your old mobile phone is valued at 4,000 rupees, the actual consideration you will be paying to the particular supplier is only 16,000 rupees. Balance 4,000 rupees you are not paying in the terms of money. You are paying as your old mobile phone. In that case, that old mobile phone which is valued at 4,000 rupees, how the value has to be determined, whether the value they are considering, whether it is satisfying this rule number 27 is what the question here. Okay, so in those type of transactions, how the value for that old product or for that exchange product or for the consideration which is not in terms of money, how the value has to be arrived. First condition is we have to find out the open market value of the consideration which is not paid in money. It could be any goods, it could be any goods other than money. So that goods or that product, the open market value of that has to be identified. Okay, if that open market value is not available, then we will have to go to the second point. Second clause says that sum of money plus amount of consideration not in money if known at the time of supply. For example, you are giving some certain consideration which is not in terms of money. It could be any product or it could be any voucher, it could be anything else other than money. If you know the value of that particular consideration, if you know the value of that particular product which you are giving as a consideration other than money, and it is known at the time of supply itself, then you will have to take the whole value as the amount of money you are paying and the value of the product which you are giving in replacement of that money. So those two has to be added, and that will be forming part of your that will be called as value of supply. Okay, if this is also not applicable, then you will have to go to the subclause C. Subclause C says value of supply of goods or services are both of like kind and quality. Here this word of like kind and quality is very important. That the value of supply of goods or services. For example, you are selling your old mobile phone. In my earlier example, your old mobile phone. For example, in the same company or the same supplier is buying the same type of mobile phone from a different customer, and that different customer, for him, they have valued at a certain amount. So that amount has to be adopted for the transaction you are making with that particular supplier. So it means that like kind or quality, it need not be the same mobile phone, the same model or same type of quality, it is like the same condition. So all these conditions are satisfied, then you can take up the relevant transaction which the supplier, either the supplier or the recipient has undertaken already. So that can also be taken as a referred value. The value adopted in that transaction will also be applicable in this transaction. So that will form part of your value of supply. Even if this particular value is also not possible, then you will have to refer to subrule D. The clause D says sum of money plus further amount of consideration which is valued as per rule 30 or rule 31. It means what? The sum of money, the amount of money you have paid plus the amount of consideration which is valued as per rule 30 or rule 31. We will be seeing how the valuation is done under rule 30 or rule 31. So that we will be seeing in the later. The condition here is, I have discussed here 4 clauses, clause A, clause B, clause C, clause D, all these 4 clauses. These 4 clauses has to be referred or it has to be applied in the sequential manner. You cannot randomly choose any of the clauses. If the first clause fails, then only you can refer the second clause. You cannot directly refer the second clause until you test the first clause, the availability of information under first clause. So all these clauses has to be applied in a sequential manner. That is very important. Okay, this is provided under rule 27. This rule shall become applicable where the consideration is not wholly in money. Okay, there are certain illustrations. Even these illustrations are provided under rules itself. Illustration number 1, as I told, similar to what I have told you, new phone supplied for rupees 20,000 along with exchange of old phone. Price of new phone without exchange is 24,000. It means if you are not exchanging your old phone, you want to buy a new phone alone. For that transaction, the supplier will be charging you 24,000 rupees. Then open market value for new phone is 24,000. You know the open market value of the particular product. It means then that will become the value of the supply. Though you are paying only 20,000 rupees along with the phone you are giving to the supplier, but the open market value of the product which the supplier is providing you is known. In that case, you will have to take the open market value. Second, laptop is supplied for rupees 40,000 along with barter of printer which is manufactured by the recipient. It means what? The laptop is, there is a supplier and there is a recipient. The recipient of supply goes to the supplier for the purchase of laptop. For the consideration for that laptop, how the consideration is paid? It is paid like 40,000 is paid along with the printer which is manufactured by the recipient himself. That printer is again giving it to the supplier in purchase of this laptop. The value of printer is known at time of supply, that is 4,000 rupees. You are applying clause B. The open market value of laptop is not known. The laptop is supplied for 40,000, but the real market value of the laptop is not known. It means clause A is failed here. Then you are referring to clause B. In the clause B, the sum of consideration, which is 40,000 rupees, plus the value, open market value of the printer which is supplied by the recipient to the supplier, that is 4,000 rupees. Then the value of the supply of this laptop purchase should be 44,000 rupees. 40,000 rupees plus 4,000 rupees, that is as per class B. Then their promotional items are given free to customers, then value for tax is only consideration charged for such supply. For example, you purchase a mobile phone and any headset or a Bluetooth headset, whatever the case may be, it is provided as free to the customer. In that case, the value of that particular item or the Bluetooth headset or any headset which is supplied along with the main product, if the value is not known, then for the taxation purpose the valuation will be taken as only the consideration charged by the supplier for the mobile phone, that will be taken. Okay, next example. A person sells 10 gram gold and buying 20 gram gold. A person or a taxpayer is going to a jewelry shop. In that jewelry shop, he is having 10 gram gold in his hand. He wants to buy 20 gram gold. He wants to sell the 10 gram and buy a new 20 gram gold. In this case, tax to be charged on the entire 20 gram gold only. This is as per rule 27. In this rule, as per this rule 27, you should not deduct the 10 gram gold's value, and only the balance 10 gram gold will not only be forming part of the value. Entire 20 gram gold, value of the entire 20 gram gold has to be considered for the valuation purpose. These are all the illustrations provided in the rule itself. Okay, so next we will get into the rule number 28. When this rule number 28 will apply, if the value of supply is between distinct or related persons, the supply is made between distinct or related persons other than through an agent. In the first scenario, where the second condition as per subsection 1 is failed, you will have to apply rule 27. Rule 28 has to be applied when the first condition is failed as per subsection 1 of section 15. So in this case, what is this rule 28? We will see. This is again referred to the same type of valuation. In rule 27, we saw 4 clauses of valuation. In rule 28, we have only 3 clauses. What are those 3 clauses? First clause, clause A, is open market value, which is similar to rule 27 clause A. That is very much similar. Rule 27 clause B is missing in this rule 28. So in rule 28, only rule 27 clause B is missing. Rule 27 clause C has become rule 28 clause B. Whatever is provided under clause C of rule 27 has become clause B under rule 28. Both are similar. It says what the value of supply of goods or services, or both, whatever the case may be, of like kind and quality. Any similar transaction, either the supplier or the recipient has undertaken with any third person. It means what? It is undertaken with other person who is not related, who is not a distinct person. So that value you will be considering for this valuation purpose. That is clause B. Clause C is similar to clause D under rule 27. So it means what? Rule 27 has 4 clauses, rule 28 has 3 clauses. Only clause B under rule 27 is missing under rule 28. Otherwise all the 3 clauses other than clause B is available under rule 28. It is similar or same under rule 28. There are certain provisos. There are 2 provisos under this rule. Proviso number 1. If the goods are intended for further supply, the value shall be at the option of the supplier be an amount equal to 90% of the price charged by the recipient from customer who is not related. Okay, let us understand this proviso. What does this proviso say? First of all, this rule 28 shall become applicable whenever the transaction happens between related persons. It means what? The supplier is supplying certain goods or services to a recipient of supply, and the recipient of supply is a related person as per explanation to section 15. We are seeing who is a related person under that section. If the transaction is happening between these 2 persons who are related, in that case, if the goods which is supplied between this related person is intended for a further supply, the recipient of this supply is buying the goods from me and it is intended for further supply. He is again going to supply to a third party customer. In that case, whatever the value the recipient of this supply charges from the third party customer, you will have to take that value. On that value you apply 90%. You can take 90% of that value and you can take that amount as a valuation for your supply. I will again repeat. There is a person A, B. A and B are related. Particular goods, for example, some rice is being supplied by A to B. A to B, both are related persons. So whatever the price charged by B or A, it cannot be directly taken for the valuation purpose because they are related persons. There may be it can be skewed as well. So in that case, what is happening, that rice which is purchased by B from A is intended for further sale. He is going to again sell it to a third party customer. So for example, this transaction undertaking between these 2, A and B, is at, for example, 30 rupees per kilo. The same rice is again sold to a third person without any much change or without any much process on that rice. So the third person, it is sold at 50 rupees. In that case, the transaction value of 30 rupees between A and B cannot be taken directly for the valuation purpose. They have to take what? 50 rupees. 90% of 50 rupees will become 45 rupees. So the transaction value of the transaction between A and B shall become 45 rupees. Again, the proviso says it is at the option of supplier. It is not mandatory they have to apply this 45 rupees. If the supplier is opting to apply that 90%, opting to apply this proviso, then the value will become 45 rupees. If he is not opting, then what it will become? It will become then you will have to refer clause C of rule 28. It means what? The valuation has to be done as per rule 30 or rule 31. Okay, next step, proviso 2. If recipient is eligible for full input tax credit, then value charged in invoice shall be deemed to be the open market value of goods or services. So proviso 2 gives you a deeming provisions. What does this proviso 2 says? A and B are related, and whatever the GST you are charging, and B, A is charging 18% GST and B is eligible for full input tax credit of whatever the supply he is receiving. In that case, whatever the value or whatever the price A charges, that will be deemed as an open market value. It means then the condition as per clause A, which is open market value, is satisfied, then that value you can take it as a valuation for this supply. This is as per the deeming fiction created by this proviso 2. Based on which condition this proviso 2 will become applicable? If the recipient of this supply or the related person if he is eligible for full input tax credit for the supply, then you can take whatever may be the valuation. See, all these rules, or this particular rule number 28 especially, is provided to no, there should not be any arrangement between parties so that the tax is tried to be evaded, or it is tried not to be paid. So in order to curb all these practices, they have tried to provide under rule 20. That is the main intention behind this rule. So as similar to rule 27, rule 28 also has to be applied in a sequential manner. Okay, next we will enter into rule 29. Value of supply made or received through an agent. Rule 28 is supply between related persons which is not through an agent. Here, value of supply made or received through an agent. In that case, what are all the conditions? Condition number 1, clause A. Open market value has to be taken, or where the goods are intended for further supply, at the option of supplier, be an amount equal to 90% of price charged for the like kind or quality of goods supplied, whatever the case may be. So that is provided here. You can easily remember this provision by reading rule 28 as well. So all these rules, you can find similar provisions or similar conditions in all these rules. So you will have to be very clear in whenever you are reading a particular rule. So under rule 28, they have provided this: if the supply is made, if the goods are supplied which is intended for further supply, that is provided under proviso 1. But that same condition is provided in the clause itself here. In the clause itself, they say you can either take open market value, or if the goods are intended for further supply, then the 90% of the price charged to the end customer can be taken as a value for this particular transaction. That is clause A. Clause B is similar to clause C of rule 28 or clause D of rule 27. It means that if the value is not determinable as per clause A, then you can refer to rule 30 or rule 31. It can be applied. So there are only two clauses. So we can again repeat now. Rule 27 has 4 clauses, rule 28 has 3 clauses, rule 29 has 2 clauses. So next, we have to know then this particular rule is applicable when if the supply is made or received through an agent. Then we have to know who is an agent. What does that agent means? The agent is defined in section 2 clause 5 of CGST Act. The definition is provided for an agent. Agent means what? Any factor, broker, any commission agent. That also includes bill credit agent. Second, the particular person carries on business of supply or receipt of goods or services. He is in the business of supply of goods or receipt of goods. So that is the second condition. Third condition, the particular person does this business not for his own. He is doing this business on behalf of any other person. If these 3 conditions are satisfied, then he will be called as an agent as per section 2 clause 5. Okay, so there are certain illustrations again provided under this rule. Illustration 1. A principal supplies groundnut to his agent. A principal supplying groundnut to his agent. The agent, after buying this groundnut, he supplies similar kind of quality of the groundnut to a third party person, and the price charged for that transaction which is supplied to the third party person is rupees 5,000 per quintal. For 1 quintal he is charging 5,000 rupees for a similar type of groundnut. It can be either the same groundnut or groundnut of a like kind or quality. That is what is extra provided under rule 29. Then another independent supplier supplies groundnuts or of like kind or quality to the agent at rupees 4,550 per quintal. This is what it is, the open market value. It can be taken as an open market value. It is a similar type of transaction which is supplied to this agent by a third party supplier, another supplier. So in this case you have 2 values. One is 5,000 which is charged from the third party customer by the agent. Second, there is another purchase made by the agent from a third party supplier which is at 4,550 per quintal. Here, what does the clause A says? Clause A says you can either apply open market value or at the option of supplier 90% of the end market value, or you can call it as the price charged from the end customer. Here we will check both the scenarios. First, open market value is 4,550 rupees per quintal. Second, 90% of 5,000 rupees will become 4,500. In this case, open market value is 4,550 and 90% of 5,000 is 4,500 rupees. Since it is at the option of the supplier can ascertain these two values, and whichever is beneficial for the supplier, he can adopt that value. That is not restricted by the act as well. Here 4,500 per quintal can be applied. It is the option of the supplier. That is, there is no mandatory for applying this particular value. Here the act or the rule does not say whichever is lower or whichever is higher. There is no such conditions here. It is purely at the option of the supplier. Okay, next we are going to this important rule called Rule 30 and Rule 31, because even Rule 27, Rule 28, Rule 29, all these three rules were referring Rule 30 and Rule 31 if at all the conditions mentioned in that particular rules are not satisfied. Okay, now we will go with Rule 30. Valuation of supply shall be based on cost. What does the Rule 30 says? The valuation can be done based on the cost. How the valuation will be done? If the value is not determinable in any of the rules discussed previously, this is similar, or it is like a residual rules. Rule 27, 28, 29, all these three rules you have tried to apply, but all the three rules have failed. It is not applicable for the particular transaction. Then you can refer to this Rule 30. It means you have to first test all these three rules. Then only you can refer to this Rule 30. So Rule 30 cannot be directly approached. It should not be straight away. You cannot circumvent the previous three rules. Next, how the value will be determined under this rule? The value is nothing but 110% of cost of production or manufacture of acquisition or cost of providing such services, whatever the case may be. Whatever the cost you have incurred in manufacturing the product or buying the product or providing the service, you can value based on 110%. You can add 10% margin on your cost, and that value will become the valuation for this supply. That is as per Rule 30. Okay, so this is very simple, that Rule 30 provides for this type of valuation. Rule 31, it is on the residual method. What is residual method? If the value cannot be determined based on Rule 27, Rule 28, Rule 29, or even Rule 30, if all these four rules fails for this particular transaction, then we will have to resort to this residual method, which is Rule 31. Under this rule, how the value will be determined is nothing but based on some reasonable basis. Reasonable means which is consistent with the principles of general provisions of Section 15. It says you can apply any method, you can apply any reasonable method, but the particular method which you are trying to apply, it should be consistent with the general provisions provided under Section 15. Section 15 subsection 1 is a general provision. You know how the particular value under subsection 1 under Section 15 is arrived. So the method you are adopting under this rule should also have some consistency towards that. If that is if that can be satisfied, if the consistency can be established by the particular taxpayer, then he can choose any method for doing this validation, and that can be satisfied with this Rule 31. Okay, there is one small proviso under Rule 31. What does the proviso says? Under Rule 31, the main rule says that in order to apply Rule 31, you should first satisfy, or first you should check the previous rules. From Rule 27 to Rule 30, you should first check whether those rules can be applied. Only if those rules are failed for this transaction, failed to apply for this transaction, then only you can resort to Rule 31. But in the case of supplier of services, he can leave out the Rule 30. He can directly resort to Rule 31. It means what? He need not mandatorily apply this Rule 30 before getting into Rule 31. He can circumvent Rule 30 and directly resort to this Rule 31. Why? You should know why this proviso is provided. Because Rule 30 is based on the valuation is based on the cost. For a supplier of service, whatever the cost will not directly represent the value, because the cost incurred for a supplier of services could be comparatively less compared to supplier of goods. So in that case, you cannot ask the person to just add a 10% as the profit margin for whatever the cost he has incurred. So that will not be reasonable for the particular supplier as well. So in order to benefit those type of supplier, the rule proviso says that you need not apply Rule 30 and directly resort to Rule 31, and you can have your own method of doing this valuation, and you can at least try to be consistent with the principle of general provisions under section 15 of CGST Act. That is the proviso here. Okay, after doing all these rules, we have seen up to Rule 31. There are some more rules as well. Before that, we will see one of the case law which will be coming under this rule. This case law is nothing but Commissioner of Central Excise, Mumbai versus Fiat India Private Limited. The case law is Fiat India Private Limited, and this case law is it has come in the previous scenario, which is under the service tax scenario. The judgment is provided by Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court. Whatever the facts of those case, even with that is proper or that prevails even after the GST, that is coming along with GST as well. That is the reason this case law can be even referred in terms of GST. We'll see what is this case law. Claim of the assessee. What is the claim of the assessee? There is a Fiat Uno model was there, which is manufactured by Fiat, that was consistently sold at below the cost, below the manufacturing cost, to non-related buyers itself for meeting some market demand. So that particular Uno model was there. Since the market demand was less for that particular model, the company was selling the product consistently below the manufacturing cost itself. Then the assessee was claiming that the selling price to be treated as sole consideration. What the company was saying is that the selling price of that particular model is the sole consideration. It means the valuation to be done based on the selling price only. Department is contending that extra commercial consideration was there. They say that whatever the price they are charging from the customer, that is not only the consideration. It means that there are certain commercial consideration which is over and above the price involved in this particular supply. Because any prudent businessman will never sell his product, consistently sell his product below the manufacturing cost. He will not do a business for a loss intentionally. It means that there should be some other benefit coming extra commercial manner. So because of that, he can be selling the product below the cost, below the manufacturing cost. That is what the contention of the department. In this case, the Supreme Court has provided the decision or the judgment as follows. Whatever the price charged by the company, it does not reflect the full commercial cost of production. It means whatever the cost of production, the price charged from the end customer, it does not reflect, they do not match. Hence, price could not be considered as sole consideration. So the criteria or the condition of price to be the sole consideration, that is failed here. It cannot be considered as the sole consideration. It also says that no prudent businessman would suffer huge losses just to penetrate into market, because the assessee was claiming that since there was lesser market demand, they wanted to penetrate into the market, they want to withstand the market conditions, they wanted to sell it at the below cost. But the Supreme Court says that any prudent businessman will not do that for a continuous period, because this particular sales was happening or this transaction was happening for more than 5 years. So continuously he will not suffer huge loss just for the purpose of penetrating into the market. It means that there are certain additional consideration, extra commercial consideration is visible here. That is what in the opinion of Supreme Court. So they have just failed this contention of the assessee and ruled in favor of the department. Okay, now we are going into the next rule. Rule number 31 capital A, Rule 31A. This rule applies in the case of lottery, gambling and any horse racing. In these type of transactions, we will have to refer to this Rule 31A. Rule 31A, it says there is a notification as well. Notification 3/2018, it was issued on 25th January 2018. There is a notification also under this rule, or this rule is actually notified through this notification. What does this notification says? Value of supply in case of lottery run by a state government. The state government is running the lottery scheme. The value for the particular lottery shall be deemed to be 100 divided by 112 of the face value, or the price notified in official gazette, whichever is higher. See, the lottery should be run by the state government. It is the state government itself is running that, introducing that lottery. In that case, how the value for the particular lottery will be determined is nothing but 100 divided by 112. 100 is just the numerator and denominator is 112 of the face value. Either it is on the face value or it will be on the price notified in the official gazette. In whichever is higher, among these two price, whichever is higher, on that you will have to apply this 100 divided by 112, and whatever the resultant answer you are getting, that will become the value for this particular lottery, at least for the purpose of GST. That is one. Second, if the lottery is authorized by state government, in the first clause the lottery is run by the state government itself, but second clause is applicable when the lottery is authorized by the state government and any third party or any private player is introducing that lottery, he is running that lottery. In that case, how the value will be determined is nothing but the value will be 100 divided by 128 of face value or the price notified in the official gazette. So whichever is higher, this is again similar. So now we will understand two differences in clause A and clause B. In clause A, the lottery has to be run itself by the state government. In that case, the formula you have to apply is 100 divided by 112. If the lottery is not run by the state government, it is just authorized any private person to run that particular lottery. In that case, the formula will be replaced with this number 100 divided by 128 of face value or the price of the particular lottery which is notified in the official gazette, whichever is higher. That is similar for both the conditions or both the clauses. That is clause number B. Clause number C, value for any actionable claim in the case of betting or horse race. It shall be 100% of face value of the bet or the amount paid into totalisator. What does this mean, totalisator? In this case, for example, there is a horse race. Horse race will be organized by one person. Some person will be organizing that horse race. You can go and participate in that racing and you can bet your own amount for the particular gambling. In that case, the valuation under this particular rule is nothing but the 100% of the face value of the bet. For example, you are betting on a particular horse for some 5 lakh rupees. In that case, whatever the value you are betting or the face value of the bet, that will become the valuation for this purpose as well. So this is as per Rule 31A. There are certain explanation. Explanation says that lottery run by state government is nothing but the sale to be done in the organizing state only. See, generally in the case of lotteries which are run by the state government, because you might be knowing there are certain states till the lottery is legal in certain states, but in Tamil Nadu lottery, sale of lottery is illegal. But in the case of Kerala, Chandigarh, I remember. So in these types of states, still the sale of lottery is legal. If the lottery is sold by Kerala state, for example, that particular lottery will be sold only in Kerala state. You cannot purchase the lottery outside that particular state. That is called as lottery run by the state government. Lottery organized by state government or authorized by state government. In that case, that lottery or the sale of that lottery can be done outside the state as well. but the organizing of that lottery will be done inside the state, but the purchase or the sale or the supply can be even made outside the state. So that is the difference between lottery run by state government or the lottery authorized by the state government. So this is rule 31A. Next we are entering into rule 32. Okay, rule 32, this is value for certain types of supplies. Value for the certain types of supplies. Valuation for following supplies at the option of the supplier. One, what are all the types of supplies which is provided under rule 32 is what we are going to see here. One, money changing services like foreign exchange dealer or the authorized agent of foreign exchange. So those are all called as money changing services. That is one. Second type of service is air travel agent of passenger transport. That is the second, agent of an air travel ticket. So that is the second type of service. Third type of service is life insurance business. So these three types of services are dealt with under rule 32. What does this rule 32 says? First type of service, money changing service, which is nothing but purchase or sale of a foreign currency. Clause A, it says what? Scenario 1, there are different scenarios. Based on that particular scenario, you have to apply the relevant provisions, or the valuation has to be applied on a relevant manner. First, for the sale or purchase of the foreign currency, there is an RBI reference rate available for the particular foreign currency. In that case, the value will be nothing but the difference between buying rate and selling rate. Because for any currency exchange, the RBI will be notifying two types of rates. One is buying rate and the second one is the selling rate. The value for the money changing services, which is attributable for the money changer, that is nothing but the difference between the buying rate and selling rate, because he will be buying at the buying rate and he will be selling the foreign exchange at the selling rate. So whatever the difference, that difference is generally called a spread. So that particular spread will become the value for the services provided by the money changer. That is for the first scenario. Second scenario, if the RBI reference rate is not available, there is no availability of the RBI reference rate for this particular currency. In that case, how the value has to be done is 1% of the gross amount of INR. For example, you are a customer, you go to a money changer. The money changer, you wanted to buy certain US dollar. For example, $100 you wanted to buy from the money changer. For example, you take the applicable exchange rate quoted by the money changer is 60 rupees per US dollar. If you want to buy $100 US dollar cost 60 rupees, then the value in INR you will be paying is 6,000 rupees. The value of the service provided by the money changer is nothing but the 1% of gross amount of INR. 1% of 6,000 rupees is nothing but 60 rupees. So that 60 rupees will become the value for the money changing services provided by the money changer. That is in the case if the RBI reference rate is not available. Then RBI reference rate is not available for both the currencies. See here, you know about the INR and USD. There are two currencies which are dealing here. For example, you wanted to buy US dollar from India. You wanted to buy US dollar and you wanted to pay in some other currency. For example, Japanese yen. You wanted to pay Japanese yen and buy US dollar. Both these currencies are foreign currency which in India. In that case, how the valuation has to be done? In that case, 1% of lower value if any of the two currencies exchange into INR. How to understand this provision? See, you are going to pay in Japanese yen. You wanted to buy US dollar, but this transaction you are doing in India. It means it is not the local currency. Both these currencies are foreign currency. So in that case, the reference rate for these two currencies are not available. It means what? RBI reference rate is not available for both these currencies. In that case, how the valuation to be done is nothing but if the Japanese yen, converting the Japanese yen to INR based on the price quoted by the money changer, if that comes to 50,000 rupees, and the US dollar, if the US dollar, whatever the US dollar he is giving, if that is converted into INR, with the rate quoted by the money changer. If that comes to 45,000 rupees, the value to be taken as 1% of the lower value of these two, 50,000 or 45,000. You have to take the lower of these two amount and you will have to calculate 1% on that in the INR terms. So that is the valuation to be done for this type of money changing services. Okay, next, money changing services purchase. There is another clause which is clause B. This clause B is just an option for the supplier. See, the clause A is the direct provision which is applicable for any money changer supplier. But there is another clause which is clause B. That clause B, the supplier can opt for this clause B if he chooses to do that. If he opts for this clause B, he can do this, he can opt for this. How the clause B, how the valuation to be done under clause B? Again, there are three scenarios. First scenario, up to rupees 1 lakh. If the transaction he is undertaking is up to rupees 1 lakh, it is in INR, then 1% of the gross amount converted or rupees 250, whichever is higher. Up to 1 lakh of the transaction, 1% of the gross amount converted or rupees 250, whichever is higher, has to be taken as the value for this particular scenario. Second, 1 lakh to 10 lakhs. If the value is 1 lakh to 10 lakhs, then in that case rupees 1000 plus 0.5% of the gross amount converted. 1000 plus 0.5% of the gross amount. More than rupees 10 lakhs, it means 5,500 rupees plus 0.1% of the gross amount converted or 60,000 rupees, whichever is lower. Let me again repeat this. Up to rupees 1 lakh, for example, your transaction is only 10,000 rupees. 1% of 10,000 rupees will become 100 rupees. But it says 100 rupees or 250 rupees, whichever is higher. It means the value for this 10,000 rupees transaction will be 250 rupees. 1% or 250, whichever is higher. That is first scenario. Second scenario, 1 lakh to 10 lakhs. 1 lakh to 10 lakhs, for example, your transaction is for 3 lakhs. 3 lakhs, then you had, how the value has to be done is, for first to 1 lakh you just leave it. For 1 lakh to 10 lakhs, that is 2 lakhs extra. On the 2 lakhs, 0.5% you should take. 0.5% of 2 lakhs rupees will be coming around 1000 rupees. So in that case, 1000 rupees plus 1000 rupees of the gross will become the value for this particular transaction. Second, if the transaction value is more than 10 lakh rupees, then the value has to be considered in this way, that is 5,500 rupees plus 0.1% of the gross amount. But in any of these cases, it should not be crossing 60,000 rupees. If the computation under this clause crosses 60,000 rupees, then the maximum you can take is only 60,000 rupees. It cannot be beyond 60,000 rupees. So this scenario, this rates has to be applied similar to a threshold rates or the rates applicable under Income Tax Act. For an individual under Income Tax Act, the slab rates are applicable for a different scenario. So in the similar way or in the same manner, you have to apply the rates as well here. So this is as per clause B. This particular valuation is only at the option of the supplier. If the supplier chooses to opt under this particular clause, then he can opt for this. Otherwise, he can opt for clause A. Clause A is a general clause. It is very much applicable. So this option can be done only at the year beginning. It cannot be done for one transaction. You cannot opt for this one transaction. You cannot opt clause A. So if at all you opt for this clause B, you should opt for this option for the entire year. If you want to change, you can change the next year. But otherwise, during the year, you cannot shift between clause A and clause B. That is the condition here. Next, for the type of service which is the travel booking, travel agent who does the passenger ticket booking, which is air travel agent. So how the value for the particular person is computed. Scenario 1, the type of ticket booking is domestic ticket booking. The airfare is for the domestic flights. In that case, 5% of the basic fare will become the value for the services provided by the agent. Value for the services provided by the agent is nothing but 5% of the basic fare in case of domestic flights, domestic air ticket booking. In the case of international air ticket booking, that 5% will be read as 10% of the basic fare. This is very simple. Basic fare is again defined as by way of explanation. Basic fare is nothing but part of airfare on which commission is normally paid to agent by the airlines. Airlines also makes payment, some commission payment to the agent. Whatever the value or whatever the fare adopted by the airlines, that will be taken as the basic fare for the valuation rules, for the valuation under this rule. Next type of valuation is value for the life insurance business. For life insurance business, how the valuation is to be done? Again, there are 2-3 scenarios here. Scenario number 1, the policy, the life insurance policy covers savings also. There is a savings element also for the policy which is under this transaction, and amount pertains to savings indicated separately to the policy holders. See, for example, if you want to go and buy any life insurance policy, there are different types of policy with different types of features, but basically you can find these 2 types of differences. One, the policy is for the risk, whatever the life risk you are having, the policy covers the life risk, and there are certain modern policies which also has a savings element on that. So you can get the amount even you are alive on certain period. It is like a regular savings plan. So in this case, if the policy is such plan, it is like a composite policy which also has risk plus savings plan, and the value which is relevant or which is for the savings plan is provided separately. It is indicated separately for the policy holder. In that case, how the value for this agent or this insurance business has to be determined? It is nothing but the gross premium less amount allocated to the savings plan. So it means what the total premium charged minus whatever the amount allocated to the savings plan, that will be the value of service provided by the for this life insurance business. Because whatever the premium which is relevant for the savings plan will not be forming part of this life insurance business at all. So that has to be deducted. Okay, second scenario is the policy is nothing, it is like a single annuity premium. It is a single premium paid on an annual basis, and though it may have risk cover plus savings cover, whatever the case may be, but there is no specifically the savings amount or the savings plan is not specifically mentioned. It is not separately provided to the policy holder. In those cases, the value will be 10% of the total premium. 10% of the total premium paid by the policy holder will become the value for this life insurance business. Third, in any other cases, if these 2 are not there, there are certain other types of plans or policies. In those cases, the premium is like this: 25% of the first year premium and 12.5% of premium for subsequent years. For first year premium, the value for the life insurance business is 25%. For the next years, whatever the subsequent years, the value will become 12.5% of the premium. This rule does not cover cases where entire premium is charged only for risk cover. It means what? If there is a policy which has both risk element as well as savings element, then only you can refer to these rules. If the policy is only for the risk element, you will not refer to this rule. Whatever the premium charged, whatever the premium paid by the policy holder will become the value for the life insurance business. So that is very clear and it is straightforward. So that is the reason we will not refer to this particular rule in the case of policy which is only for the risk cover. Okay, next, rule 32. Rule 32 again continues that value for supply of second-hand goods. There is a transaction in the nature of supply of second-hand goods. How the value will be determined? There are certain scenarios. Now we are going to see the scenario number 1. In scenario number 1, the condition of the second-hand goods, that is, the condition for applying this particular rule is nothing but buying and selling of second-hand goods should be there. One. Second, with or without minor processing. You buy the second hand goods, you will not do much process, or you will not do much alterations to the particular goods before selling it to the third party customer. So that is not done. That is the second condition. Or the process which you are doing, it does not change the basic nature of goods itself. If that is there, then this particular rule will apply. Then ITC not availed on purchase of such goods. So this ITC available is only the different scenario here, but first two condition which I mentioned is applicable for any scenario. If at all you wanted to apply this rule, these two conditions are mandatory to be satisfied. One is buying and selling of the particular supplier is just in buying and selling of second hand goods. Second, he buys the second hand goods, he does not do much processing or much work, he is not carrying out on the goods, he is just selling. For example, I'll tell you, the supplier is into the business of buying second hand motorbikes and selling it. In that case, he buys a second hand motorbike, he just does a small repair just to make it to a running condition, to a normal condition, saleable condition, and he is selling that. That does not change the basic nature of that particular motor vehicle. He is not doing the alteration which changes the nature of the motor vehicle itself. In that case, this rule will apply, and he has not also availed the input tax credit on the purchase he has made from the third party whenever he has purchased that motor vehicle. In that case, how the value will be determined? One, difference between purchase price and selling price, that will be called as value. That is very simple and straightforward. If the above difference is negative, if the difference between purchase price and sale price is negative, you cannot take the negative figure and you cannot calculate tax on the negative figure, and you cannot claim refund from the department. What you have to do is, it will be taken as nil. The value will be taken as nil. That is the condition here. So under scenario 1, what it is, the supplier has to be in the business of buying and selling second hand goods, and the goods has to be sold without further much processing on that, which changes the nature of the goods itself. Third is, he has not availed any input tax credit on the purchase. In that case, value will be just the difference between the purchase price and the selling price. If the difference is negative, then it will be taken as nil. Scenario 2 is value of goods is repossessed. In this rule, how it is done, the goods is actually repossessed from an unregistered borrower who has defaulted loan. For example, a bank has provided loan for a customer who is purchasing a new car, and that car, the customer has not paid the loan, the repayment of loan is not done by the customer properly. In that case, the bank will confiscate or take back the goods which is on which the loan has been borrowed. So in that case, whatever the goods repossessed in such a manner, for that how the value will be determined. Value will be purchase price by the defaulting borrower. Whatever the purchase price by the defaulting borrower, that has to be taken, and 5% of reduction has to be done, and depreciation of 5% has to be provided for every quarter or part thereof. For every quarter you have to calculate 5%, you will have to reduce from the particular purchase price, during which period, from the date of purchase by the borrower till the date of sale. Let us now go to the next rule. Rule number 32, sub rule 6. This rule applies for valuation of vouchers or a coupon or any stamp which is other than postage stamp. So for these type of goods, this rule has to be referred. Vouchers or coupons or stamps which is redeemable against supply of goods or services or both. Example is like if you are having any lifestyle coupon, so that you are going to you can go to the lifestyle store, you can buy any products offered by the particular merchant, and against the payment for that particular product you can redeem this voucher, and that is redeemed against the particular supply. So that is called as vouchers. Third, shall be equal to the value of goods or services redeemed. So the voucher, the value of this particular voucher will be nothing but the equivalent value of the goods which is supplied against this voucher, that will be taken for the value of this voucher. very simple. Okay, next rule. Value of services provided by certain class of persons. Certain class of persons are providing certain services, and the valuation for those services will be in the following manner. This is a residual rule. In this, government shall notify any class of persons, distinct persons as specified in Schedule 1. Under Schedule 1, you know about the distinct persons, and the class of distinct persons will be notified by the government for whom this rule will become applicable, and where ITC is available shall be nil. This rule says what? The valuation for the service can be nil for the supply between distinct persons. The distinct persons will be notified by the government, or the type of service will be notified by the government. Everything whatever is notified by the government, the valuation can be taken as nil. That is what this particular sub-rules says under Rule 32. Now we enter into Rule 33. Rule 33 is for the valuation of supply, which is in the case of a pure agent. Okay. First we will know what a pure agent means, or who is called as a pure agent. Explanation to this particular rule defines the pure agent. Explanation is as like follows. The agent is entering into a contract for what? To incur certain expenditure or cost in the course of the supply. See, a person is entering into a contract with the supplier or recipient, whatever the case may be. The person is entering into a contract with another person. Based on that contract, he says that he will act like as a pure agent. Acting as a pure agent means he is incurring the expenditure or cost in the course of his supply. He is incurring those expenditure as a pure agent for the third party or the another person. That is pure agent. Second, he does not hold any title in the goods he procures or supplies. For example, he purchases certain goods and he supplies to the recipient. The title of the goods is not possessed by him. He does not take the title of those goods. He just facilitates the transaction. That is the second condition. Third, he does not use the goods procured or supplied in his own interest. Whatever the goods he procures, he just facilitates the transaction. He just facilitates the movement. He does not use the goods for his own interest. That is third condition. Fourth condition is he receives only actual amount for the goods procured or supplied and charges commission separately. See, for example, I appoint one agent on behalf of me, and I ask that agent to procure certain household materials for me. Instead of me going and purchasing that materials, I am appointing an agent. So what that agent does, the agent goes to the particular shop and he buys the goods whatever is required by me. Whatever the goods I ask the agent to purchase, he goes to the shop, purchases on behalf of me, and he gets the actual bill. He gets that amount as a reimbursement from me, and whatever the service provided by the particular agent, it is purchasing the goods and giving it to me, that particular service, he is charging commission separately on that. So in that case, that particular person is called as a pure agent. Okay, then how the valuation will be done. The value of supply does not include the reimbursement of cost or expenses incurred by the pure agent. If the following conditions are satisfied, it means what? The total valuation or whatever the amount you are paying to the pure agent, if that is the reimbursement of expenses, it is only the actual reimbursement of expenses, then that reimbursement will not form part of the value of supply provided by the pure agent if the following conditions satisfy. What are all those conditions? The pure agent makes payment to the third party as authorized by the recipient only. See, the agent does not uses his opinion, or he does not take any of his own action for identifying the recipient. He just the person who is having the agent, he just advises the agent to make this payment to the third party. Based on his authorization, he is making the payment. That is one. Second, payment made to third party is mentioned separately in the invoice issued by the pure agent. See, the pure agent has made the payment, and that is separately mentioned in the invoice. That is, based on your request, I have made this payment. So this is a pure reimbursement for me. That is to be separately mentioned in the invoice. Third, supplies procured by pure agent as pure agent or in addition to the supply provided on his own account. It means what I told you, that he has purchased the goods or supplied the goods apart from he being acting as a pure agent. This supply is over and above his own supply or his own supply of services. So in these conditions are satisfied, then the value of that supply will not be form part of the value of the supply provided by the pure agent. I will give an example. You take help of an agent who is like a forwarding agent, clearing and forwarding agents. You can find in recent days clearing and forwarding agent. For example, you are an importer. You import certain goods from outside India, and that goods have reached the port of your city. So there are certain customs process or clearance has to be done on the goods before the goods can be taken for the home consumption. So for that you are appointing a clearing and forwarding agent. So that agent will act on behalf of you. He does all this paperwork or whatever the work to be done for taking out the goods. He is dealing with the customs authority and he is taking out the goods. In that case, there are 2-3 elements involved here. One, whatever the value of goods, if he pays to the particular supplier on behalf of you, this is nothing but he makes payment to the third party on your recommendation or whatever you have told him, instructed him. So that is a pure reimbursement. If that amount he is getting it back from you, it is a pure reimbursement. It will not form part of his value of supply. Second, he charges commission for the particular supply. He is charging the commission separately. That will form part of his valuation. Only that commission amount will be forming part of his value. Third type of condition is he can incur certain expenses. For example, he can make certain customs duty payment for taking out the goods. In the case of import, he has to make certain customs duty payment. That customs duty payment has to be paid by the importer. He, acting as a pure agent on behalf of you, is making the payment to the customs authorities. So that is, and that amount is again in turn he has got it as reimbursement from you. In that case, that reimbursement also will not form part of his valuation. So that is as per rule 33. Okay, so as we discussed, we have discussed from rule 27 to rule 33, and we have also discussed under this valuation chapter certain circulars. There are some more circulars as well. One other circular we have to discuss under this valuation chapter. That circular is circular number 115/34/2019, which is issued on 11th October 2019. What does this circular says? It is very clear that passenger service fee or user development fee charged by the airlines from you, and it is paid to the airport authorities. See, airlines charges some fee called passenger service fee from the end customer, and that service fee he collects from the traveler, and that is paid to the airport authority. In this case, airlines is just acting like a pure agent for the airport authority for collection of this service fee from the traveler. So in collecting PSF or UDF from passengers on behalf of airport authority, the service is provided by the airport. This fee is nothing but the services provided by the airport authorities for the travelers. So in that case, whatever the collection charges, so whatever the service fee he is collecting, that will not form part of the value of the service provided by the airlines to the airport authority. I will repeat, the airport authority has requested the airlines to collect this passenger service fee or user development fee, whatever the case may be, from the traveler on behalf of the airport authorities along with the ticket cost. So what does this airlines do? They collect the service fee, and that amount at gross is paid back to the airport authorities. This service fee is the service provided by the airport authority to the traveler. They are maintaining the airport, they are provided this facility of this airport, whatever the case may be. For that, the service fee is done. Here the airlines is acting as only a pure agent. They does not have any any option, or they does not have any stake on this particular service fee. So this particular supply of being a pure agent service provided to the airport authority will not include the service fee collected from the airport fee collected from the end traveler. So the GST will be paid only on certain collection charges which will be separately charged by the airlines to the airport authority. On that only the GST will become applicable. This passenger fee will not be included in that value. That is what this circular clarifies. Okay, next we are entering into Rule 34. Rule 34, it is for the rate of exchange for determination of value. See, if the supply is in a currency other than INR, if the supply is in a currency other than INR, how the exchange rate has to be determined for the purpose of valuation in INR, that is provided under Rule 34, and there is a small amendment as well under Rule 34 by way of notification number 17/2017, which is issued on 27th July 2017 itself. What type of transaction here? Supply of taxable goods. There is a supply of taxable goods or supply of taxable services, whatever the case may be. The value has to be taken as the exchange rate as notified by the board. See, in the case of supply of taxable goods, the exchange rate as notified by the board has to be taken as the exchange rate. Under section 14 of the Customs Act, on the date of time of supply, whenever you are determining the time of supply as per section 12, which you have discussed before, on that date whatever the exchange rate notified by the board, that has to be taken as the rate of exchange for the valuation. If it is a supply of taxable services, then exchange rate has to be taken as per the GAAP. GAAP is nothing but the generally accepted accounting principles. As per that principle, whatever the exchange rate it provides, for example, there is an accounting standard that provides for the exchange rate, that exchange rate you will have to adopt for this valuation of this taxable services. It has to be applied on what date? It has to be applied on the date of time of supply of goods as per section 13. We know the time of supply as per section 13. On that date, whatever the exchange rate as per the GAAP you can able to arrive at or identify, that exchange rate will become applicable for the valuation. So this rule applies whenever the supply is done in a currency other than the home currency. It is done other than INR. For example, you are billing in USD, then in that case how the valuation will be done for the taxation, because you cannot charge the tax in USD and pay in USD to the government. You will have to mandatorily pay the taxes in INR. So to arrive at that INR value, you will have to convert the value of the service you provided or value of the supply you have made. That value has to be mandatorily converted into INR to compute the applicable taxes. For that, what is the exchange rate you will have to consider? That is what provided under Rule 34. Then there is one last rule, which is Rule 35. This Rule 35 is nothing but in the case of supply, where the supply is made and you have not charged tax separately, the tax is not charged separately, and you say that the value which I have quoted for the supply, which is also inclusive of taxes. In that case, how the amount of taxes has to be taken? In that, we have to refer this rule. So this rule says any tax amount shall be determined as per the following formula. The formula is provided under this rule. If the value of supply charged by the supplier is inclusive of taxes type of supply. What is the formula here is the tax amount is nothing but the value inclusive of taxes. The value should take inclusive of taxes into the rate of tax in percentage. You should take into the rate of tax in percentage divided by 100 plus sum of tax rates in percentage. I will give an example. You have charged 118 rupees as the value. You have not separately charged the tax, or you have not separately provided this is the value and this is the tax amount, this is the total invoice amount. This is not done. You have straight away charged one amount, which is 118 rupees for any supply you have made. In that case, you will have to arrive at the tax amount. So that amount will be paid to the government. So how the amount will be arrived? Based on applying this formula. What does this formula says? Value inclusive of taxes. In this case, it is 118 rupees. 118 rupees into rate of tax in percentage. It means 118 rupees into 18 percentage divided by 100 plus sum of tax rates in percentage. It means what? If it is CGST, 9 plus 9. If If it is IGST, 18%. So 100 plus 18, 118. So ultimately it will become like this, 118 rupees into 18 divided by 118. You will get the tax amount as 18 rupees in this case. This is as per rule 35. They have provided the formula in the case of supply which is inclusive of taxes. Okay, now we will see couple of questions under these valuation rules before we conclude this valuation chapter. Okay, question number 1 is Ram & Co is a dealer in electronics and electrical items. Ram & Co is a dealer, and here the Ram & Co has issued certain gift voucher to its customer for 2000 rupees on 15th of November. So customer can use the gift voucher to purchase anything which is available, which our Ram & Co is dealing with. Any goods he is dealing with, he can use the voucher for purchasing that. So customer purchased certain goods which is worth 1400 rupees on 20th November 2017. Applicable CGST and SGST rate is 9% on under each law. Now what you have to find is, first you have to find the time of supply, when the time of supply is there. Second, value for this supply. And third, GST liability in the hands of Ram & Co. First question, time of supply. You know, as per section 12, what is the time of supply in the case of supply of vouchers? It is nothing but if the date of issue of the voucher is known, then that particular date has to be taken as the time of supply. If the date of issue of voucher is not known, then you can take the date of redemption of that voucher. So in this case, the date of issue of voucher is 15th November, which is known, and the date of redemption of the voucher for purchasing the goods is 20th November. It means the time of supply is 15th November here. Because it is known, we have to first apply that condition. If that condition is not applicable only, we have to apply the date of redemption. Since the date of issue of voucher is known here, you have to take the time of supply as date of issue of voucher, which is nothing but 15th November. Okay, for the valuation of this goods, we'll have to refer to rule 32 sub rule 6. What does rule 32 sub rule 6 says? The value for the voucher shall be the equivalent amount of the redemption value of that. So in this case, the customer has purchased goods which is worth rupees 1400 rupees. So the value of supply in this case shall become only 1400 rupees. But the time of supply is 15th of November. Third question is GST liability in the hands of Ram & Co. What will be the GST liability? You should compute 1400 into applicable rate is 9% under CGST and 9% under SGST. You compute that on 1400, it will become 126 rupees under each law. So that will become the GST liability. Okay, this is the answer for this question. Next question, Mr. X is a customs broker, issues an invoice for reimbursement of certain expenses and for consideration towards this certain agency services he has rendered to an importer. So the amounts charged by the broker are as provided here. We have to find the taxable value for the services in the hands of the customs broker. So what all to be included, what all to be excluded. If you can able to determine that, then you can easily identify the value of taxable supply. First type of charges he has made is agency income. Whatever the agency income, 10,000, which is to be included because it is the commission he has charged. Second, traveling expenses. He has made some travel which is required for providing the agency supply. It is not for this particular expense cannot be treated as a reimbursement of expense because it is not as per the option of the recipient. For the purpose of providing this agency services, he has done that particular travel. So it is forming part of his valuation. It cannot be treated as a reimbursement of expense. So that has to be added for the valuation. Third, hotel expenses. It means the stay charges. For providing the particular service, he has taken some hotel services. So that is like an input service for providing this output service, which is agency function. That has to also be added in the taxable value. Fourth, customs duty. See, whatever the amount of customs duty paid to the customs authorities, it is for the purpose of doing this supply. See, this customs duty is paid purely on behalf of Mr. X, and it is not the liability of the agent to make this customs duty. So So in that case, that amount is just a pure reinvestment, so that will not form part of the taxable supply. Next, dock dues. Dock dues are nothing but if the goods are held in the ship for certain period of time, they have to make certain payment for the customs authorities. It is similar again, these charges are levied also by the customs authorities. It is paid as a pure agent on behalf of Mr. X, so that will also be not forming part of the taxable value. So the total value here will become 10,000 plus 5,500 plus 9,500, which is nothing but 16 plus 9,000, which is 25,000 rupees. 25,000 rupees will become the value of taxable supply provided by this broker. Next, there is one situation here. We will see the situation now. An assessee was under impression that his product is exempt from GST, and hence he has sold the goods at rupees 100 per piece without charging any GST. Later, it was found that actually the product was chargeable with IGST of 18%. Now the department is claiming that since the goods were removed without GST, transaction value should be rupees 100 and GST is to be paid accordingly. It means what? You have to take the transaction value as 100 rupees and you have to calculate applicable GST. For example, it is 18% here. So 18% of 100 rupees, 18 rupees the particular person has to pay to the authorities. That is what the department is claiming here. Assessee is contending that the price whatever is charged by him, it is inclusive of GST itself. It means that he has not separately connected in GST. Whatever the price he has charged, that is inclusive of GST. So you have to refer to this rule 35 and you have to find this particular GST amount. That amount only will become payable for the government. That is the contention of the assessee. So what is the correct GST payable here is what the question here in this scenario. So in this scenario, this scenario is based on a case law. We have to refer this case law to answer this question. This case law is nothing but Commissioner of Central Excise versus Maruti Udyog Limited. This case law has come in 2002. By applying this particular case law, we can answer for this above question or the above scenario. So applying this case law, based on the decision of the Supreme Court, the answer for the question will be whatever the assessee contended that the price charged by the assessee is inclusive of GST is correct, and it is the decision is provided in favor of the assessee. So with this, our concept of this valuation under GST is it has got over. So you can refer to various questions or various scenarios for your practice purpose, and we can see more videos on different chapters. We'll meet in the next video. Thank you.